The M700 is the most modifiable of all of the bolt actions. It has 5 different base stocks, dozens of magazines, and even a few barrels to choose from. Add in Tarkov's confusing system of stats and various mechanics, and it makes building an M700 a daunting proposition. Now, this guide is going to break down every part of the M700. I'm going to talk about some specific best-in-class builds and show you how to build the weapon so that you can put one together that fits your needs, budgets, and level. Now, if you're new to the channel, these build guides are a little bit different than the most you'll see out there. I will have specific builds in here for you to copy if you want, but the main goal is to teach you how Tarkov assembles the M700 so you can build one yourself as stats change on the various parts and what is available you shifts around. Plus, some of us like to build guns that look cool, and what you think looks cool is different than others. All right, so starting off, we're going to talk about the 5 different chassis that you have, whatever you have available to you as an M700. The first off is the overmolded ghillie stock. This is the standard stock that comes with every one of the M700s you're going to buy, just about. The ones you're going to get on scavs, most of them you're going to get on the flea market. After that, you have the Archangel stock, and it's simple like the overmold is. It's just one part, but it has a little bit better stats. If we look at the Archangel versus the overmold, I'll show you here. It's got better ergo, increase in accuracy. The problem is it is a little bit heavier and it's more expensive. But for those looking to slap one together real quick, this is about the simplest way you can mod. It also gives you some options with magazines that you don't have on any of the other builds that are pretty interesting, but we'll get to those when we get to the magazines. This is available on Mechanic Loyalty Level 3. So once you get to level 30, essentially, and if you got everything done, you can buy this. Along with Mechanic Loyalty Level 3 is the M700 AICS stock. This is the lightest weight frame out there. It only weighs 0.71 kilos. It's extraordinarily light. And if you want your lightest build, this is the stock you're going to go with. And we'll get into that in a little bit more detail when we talk about the specific builds. Now, the M700 Pro is the first of your more complex stocks, if you will, or chassis. It's got a couple of multiple parts on here, from the pistol grip, the front rail, as well as the stock, and I'll go on there. Now, the front rail isn't required. A lot of people you'll see build this and don't even realize this front rail's there. It takes away one ergo, but it gives you the ability to add a front sight post, so you can go there on what you want to do with that. This is available at Skier Loyalty Level 3. All of the parts are, as well as you need to be able to buy the rails that go on here. It actually can put the, let me go into the preset here. You can actually put a foregrip rail on here as well, which I didn't have on there. We'll just put this one on there, which will allow you to put on the various foregrips if you want for the M700 Pro chassis. Now, last but certainly not least is the Mod X chassis. This is the most complex, the most modifiable, and the most expensive. You know, this is one of the fully modified ones I have. If you start looking at what it costs to find these things, you're already pushing, 350,000 depending on the optics and the various parts you're going to put on there. Now, once you complete a hunting trip, which let me back out of here and I will show you on Jaeger, once you complete hunting trip with him, it unlocks 4 of these builds for you to buy straight away from him. And that's how I got these ones here, just to show you guys. If we go look at Jaeger and bolt actions, you'll see I have them for purchase right here on top of the regular M700 Barter. Not a huge deal, and with like the Archangel, it's actually cheaper just to buy the parts off the flea and put it together, but it's a little bit cheaper than some of the other stocks than buying the parts themselves and the M700, especially if you don't have the cheap Barter. And like I said, I don't think we can ever do a video here on this channel without talking about saving you money on barters. Now, the M700 itself will run you anywhere from, this one's pretty cheap, but 65, 70 sometimes, usually in that 50,000 range, just to buy one off the flea. Unless, of course, somebody's listing one cheaper, or you go after one of the lower condition ones, which I will talk about in a sec you shouldn't do. The Barter here costs you 1 Deadly Slaw beard oil, and these usually run 35, 40,000, so you can always get an M700 for that price. There is another Barter over on Mechanic. Wouldn't do us justice without going and looking at that one, but it is pretty expensive. 2 military cables, 5 ES cables to get you the M700 with a suppressor and a scope that you're probably not going to use anyways. Now, as far as the full durability and why you want to do that, I went out and shot a couple of these to pair them up. I shot this one here that has 43.9 durability and 3.65 MOA versus 100 durability and 0.79 MOA. And that has entirely to do with accuracy. For those of you that aren't familiar, MOA is basically a cone that comes out of the front of your gun that a bullet's going to strike in. And the bigger the MOA, the bigger that cone. Now, with the quick testing I did, you can see the difference between these two rifles, and it's not insignificant. I was aiming at the cross point of each of the 8s at 250 meters, and as you can see, it isn't an insignificant difference. So use the lower quality durabilities at M7 at your own peril. Now, if you're shooting under 150 meters, it probably won't matter too much, but the whole point of using a bolt action is to shoot people far away. And if you're doing that at 250 meters with a high MOA, you're very likely going to miss your headshots that you're going for. But with that out of the way, let's get into the meat and potatoes here, the parts of the gun. Now, first up is going to be barrels. And pretty simply put, just use the stock barrel, the 20-inch threaded barrel that comes on all of the M700s. There are small advantages to using the longer barrels, for example. You get obviously you get a little bit less recoil, but that doesn't matter as much. You get a little bit higher muzzle velocity, but not as much as you'd get with a suppressor and other attachments on there. And they have quite a bit higher accuracy. But the problem is they're not threaded, so you can't put any suppressors or compensators on the end of them to further increase the ability of the gun. So in my mind, it's just never worth trading off for that extra bit of accuracy. And there is also a stainless steel barrel that's 20 inches. The only real advantage this has is that it has a lower durability burn. So it's going to lower the durability burn on your weapon. But with these being so cheap, that's not that big of a deal. And by using this, you're also trading off accuracy as well as muzzle velocity. So I don't ever use any other barrel than the standard 20-inch. Now on the 20-inch barrels, keep in mind there are, whoopsies, I backed out here. There are caps on the 20-inch barrels, which will prevent you from being able to drop on a suppressor or any kind of attachment, because it says slot is not empty. You just got to make sure you take those off. They come on some of the builds like this. They will not come on like scav guns and stuff, but you can see these builds that I bought from Jaeger have that cap on the end of there. So just keep that in mind. If you're having a hard time putting parts on, that might be what's going on. Now, next up is magazines, and these are kind of a cluttered bunch here. There's a couple of things that is easy to remember, but primarily there's groups of magazines for specific chassis. Now you have the Wyatt magazines, the 5 and the 10 rounder. They can only go on the overmolded ghillie stock, so they won't go on any of these others. They won't fit. It just is what it is. The AA-70, you have a 10 rounder and a 20 rounder, which is crazy. They go on the Archangel. And so if you want 20 rounds in a magazine for a bolt action, like you want to go into raid and you don't have to worry about reloading, this is it right here, because you can actually top load the M700, which is kind of handy. And all that means is you just got to have ammo in your pocket or your vest, and it will allow you to reload straight from that, shove it in the top of the barrel, and you don't need additional magazines. But yeah, the Archangel gives you a 20 rounder. Now the PMag, the 5 rounder and the 10 rounder, which are probably the most common that I use because of their lightweight and ergo stats, they go in the 3 last chassis. The AIS, the Pro, and the Mod X will all take the PMags, as you can see here. Same thing goes with the AICS mags, and you have 3 choices. You have 5, 10, and 12 rounds. Those will all go in all 3 of those. And the 12 rounder is another one I commonly use just because it's a couple extra bullets. Its ergo hit isn't that bad, and you just have that extra bit of ammo in the weapon and not have to worry about reloading as much. Now, the last weapon-specific parts we have are the scope mount or rails that go on top of the weapon itself. So on the regular M700, we'll pull this down. That's what you can put these on. All of them of sorts, these 30mm rings, they just bolt straight on as long as they don't have a rail. The M700's multi-slot will also go on almost all of them. The only one it will not go on is the Mod X chassis, because the Mod X chassis, it actually has one on here now, so let me pull it off. It just doesn't fit. It does not go on there because it doesn't fit with the way that things are going. So the Mod X chassis will go on there, but will also go on all of the builds. So you can use the Mod X on anything you want, and there is no difference in stats between these two. They're just really, the difference is look, and the fact one will go on the Mod X and one will not. Now, keeping in with this, we'll talk really quick about scopes and mounts. The 2 most common scopes I use are the 1-6 Voodoos. They go on 30mm scope rings, and the 3 most common ones you see out there are either the Night Force mag mount 30mm, because it is the lightest. It is also the lowest profile, but also the Geisley. Now, the interesting thing about the Geisley is these 2 parts are plus 0.05 ergo. So together, you actually get 1 ergo for having a scope mount. What all of the others are -1 or at best nothing, 0. Like the Recoil, both the 30 and 34mm they're not a -1, they're not a +0. Plus, they have the scope mounts on top, or the rails on top, which I usually use to put on. As you can see here, I put a rangefinder up on top like that. Moving over to muzzle devices, we have there. I'll show you here real quick. Let me just pull up the pre-build for this, or the presets for this. There is an unbelievable amount of barrel attachments for this weapon, and many of these have suppressors that go along with them as well. The most important part of the ones I'm going to talk about here we'll get into. So the Shrewd is, if you're going to be loud, this is the one that gives you the most muzzle velocity. So this will speed up your bullets the most. This is how you get the fastest rounds in the game outside of the 338 Lapua. And so if you're going to shoot long distances, you'll do it with this, but you're going to be loud. So just keep that in mind. After that, you have the BMD. Now this is great for recoil reduction. Let me put everything together here. It's a 3-part piece, goes together like this. It ends up giving you a pretty good decrease in recoil, like I said, but a slight decrease in muzzle velocity and some hit to your ergo. But that's if you're going for like a recoil build for some reason and you want to be loud, that's the way to go. Now, as far as suppressors, you got a couple options here for specific reasons, and then just I've got pretty much all of them in here so you can see them. The Ultra 5 is going to be your lightest weight suppressor. So if you're trying to save weight, this is going to be the way to go. The Gemtech 1 is also a good choice. I like it for its low ergo, decent recoil, but its cheapness overall. If you have it, you can buy it from traders. You can usually get the suppressor for less than 30K. The only thing that ends up being expensive if you don't have traders is this mount, but it's only $44. Otherwise, you're going to spend anywhere from, you know, some people list these things for 50, 60, 70, 80K, and so that can be pricey. But the Gemtech 1 is a way to save a little bit of money on suppressors. The Hybrid 46 is another way, and this is actually one of my more favorite suppressors to run on bolt actions and stuff when I'm not super worried about recoil, because you can get it really cheap. On the flea market, it's expensive, right? It's 80, 90K, but it only takes 4 ram sticks with the barter from Mechanic, right? Right here, 4 ram sticks. So you're talking 40, maybe 50,000 rubles for it. And then the really cheap threaded adapter, and you can have your Hybrid 46. Now the Wave QD, I also want to point out simply because it can be cheap as well. You can get it sometimes lower than 40,000, so it's just another option out there. The two Sig Sauer suppressors, just point them out because they're in the game, and you have 2 options with one of them actually. This one, the Sig Sauer SDR 762 Ti is a direct thread. It bolts right on to the gun. Let me pull off the thread cap so I can show you. It goes right on there. There's nothing fancy, no adapters, no nothing. This is what you'll see on lots of like RFBs and things like that. However, the QD, which has the quick detach to it, it goes on, but you can put these 2 separate flash hiders in here and get their stats. So this one is recoil. This is the one you're going to see on like MCXs and stuff the most frequently. This will go on there and you get that additional recoil stat. But this 3-prong flash hider actually has the highest muzzle velocity add to it. So it's not as good on recoil, but it gives you a little bit better muzzle velocity on the weapon overall and bumps it up that little bit higher. So that is that suppressor system right there. And then lastly, you have the SDN6, which comes on that Mechanic barter. It's kind of an expensive suppressor. It's got a couple options on how to attach it, but it will go on the M700 if you have one sitting in your inventory. I'll get into these pre-builds here. I ran out of inventory space for you guys, so we're going to do them on this screen. I can't really show them in the inventory without selling a bunch of shit and then having to rebuy it. So we'll just do it right here. This should work pretty well. So this is the lightest weight, but there's a couple of things on here I have that you can change up if you want. Now I put a suppressor on here. If you don't have a suppressor on here at all, you can see it saves you a little bit of weight. We can go down 0.32 with no suppressor. I suggest putting the threaded cap on there. It doesn't have any really weight, but it adds a little bit of ergo and it just kind of makes the gun look a little bit nicer. But the Ultra Beast, again, is the lightest suppressor. It uses the 30CB attachment there and then the Ultra 5. I also did not put a rail on the bottom. So if you want to do that, you can, to put like a flashlight or a rangefinder or something to see in the dark, you're able to do that. But again, that just starts adding weight to it. And then the optics, this is going to catch a lot of people by surprise, but this is actually one of the lighter optics out there that is 1:6. You can actually get a little bit lighter going with like a 4X, like a Trigicon, something like that. But the weight addition, so we're 3.459. If you go with a, let's say a TAC 30, you are 3.559, so you're 0.1, and then even more if you go with the Voodoo or the Razor. They're both the same weight. They add more. And then the last piece being the magazine, you can go with different mags. While the 10-round mag is only 0.03 heavier, it has more ammo in it, which is going to be heavier unless you have max strength, and then you don't have to worry about it. But that's all here part of that. Weight is the biggest determining factor for how long you can ADS. Ergo does have a small effect, but not as much. I did some testing, and I'll show you that here in a sec. Let me pull up the fine parts for this so you guys can see it if you want. For all the build we have here, this was with the Voodoo on there, though. You've got the stock. We'll take the gun out of that because you're going to find that different. But you've got the stock. And it's pretty much it. It's a pretty simple weapon build. Now, as far as we were talking about ergo and weight, right? So I put these two guns. I went into offline raid and saw how long I could ADS standing with these two weapons, and they're pretty close to weight. How I have them set up here, I took the mag out and just ADS'd like that. The difference was about 3 seconds, 2 to 3 seconds. One was about 52, a little bit more, and the other one was right around 55 seconds that I could ADS with the difference between 25 and 54 ergo. Whereas the difference in weight, it's all over the place. But long story short, you're talking, the difference between ADSing with this guy here and the lightweight one is anywhere from 10 to 15 seconds, depending on how you have them built and how much weight you have in there. So weight is the ultimate determining factor in how long you can ADS. So keep that in mind if you're planning on ADS in a very long time. That's what's important. Though 50 seconds of ADS time for me is plenty with the Mod X, so I'm plenty happy running that. But if you are looking to get the highest ergo possible you can out of an M700, whether you want a quick ADS or whatever you're doing, this is the setup right here. Now, the key components, again, are the SI Cobra, which I have on top of an M-Lock on the Pro 700 mag. So, and then again, the hybrid 46 suppressor because of its ergo. I'm using the Geisley scope mount for its additional ergo. I have a front and rear sight for their ergo. And then the Voodoo is actually only -1 ergo, whereas the Razor is -2, so keep that in mind. And then using the 5-rounder mag. Now, the reason for doing this, I guess, is if you want to be able to ADS really quickly, because that's where, or make less noise, because that's where ergo really kicks in, is how fast your ADS speed is, how much noise you make when you are ADS and un-ADSing. So that would be a use for this really high ergo M700 if you were looking for that, or just something that looks different. I think this kind of looks cool, solid black all the way through, kind of a neat little weapon. Now, for the Mod X chassis, the possibilities are endless on here. I did have one build here for you guys to show because it was super cool. I had never done this before. I had never tried to build a M700 down to minimum recoil, but you can actually get it down to 37 recoil, which is absurd. It's not super useful. Having a lower recoil, like 37 versus like a max recoil of like whatever it is, 150, is different because you can actually, the recoil doesn't fly as much, so you can actually maintain your sight picture through most of the shot at 37. It is really clean shooting it like this, and you can see really well. But you're trading off a ton of stuff to get here, mostly the weight. You're just adding a lot of weight doing this, and trading off the ergo, which we've shown isn't a huge deal, but I like having higher ergo. The big parts on here to share are the MT Cross buffer tube, which is just kind of this, or the Mesa Cross is just kind of a weird buffer tube that you can use for minimum recoil builds, the PRS stock, as well as the really expensive QDC suppressor and muzzle device right here to get that recoil down, along with the RK2, which is really heavy, but also the -4 recoil. So build this if you want. Here's some pictures of me shooting it, so you can see how low recoil it is, how it just doesn't move when you shoot, which is kind of nice. Now, I was prone, which does help a bit, but usually most of the time when I'm sniping, I'm prone anyways. Now, staying in with the Mod X chassis, just because it kind of looks cool, you have another option here. You can actually get pretty low weight and have decent recoil and ergo with the Mod X lowest weight edition, if you will. The cool thing about the Mod X is the chassis is key mod, so it gives you some additional options on grips that you don't normally have. So this one is the MT vertical foregrip. It's only 3 ergo, but it only weighs 0.03 pounds. It weighs, or 0.303 kilos. It weighs next to nothing. Again, we have the Ultra 5 on here to save weight, and the the Valde scope for the minimum weight direction. And then, even though this isn't the best grip, it is the lowest weight. You get the TD 2001 skeletonized grip, which will give you the lowest weight. And then lastly, we use the advanced tube, the black advanced tube, not the red one. You can use the red one if you want. It is the lowest weight, along with the SOP mod. That puts you at a grand total of 4.43 kilos with no ammo in it, which is really, really light. So you'll be able to ADS this thing for quite a while. It's still got 42 ergo and only 66 recoil, so it's manageable on the other ends. And then lastly, we have the Max Ergo Mod X, which is actually higher than the other build as far as Ergo is concerned. But it's so much more expensive. I wanted to make sure to show that one first. But you're up to 72 Ergo here with a mag in. And I'm using the 5-round P mag. Again, you can use some of the others. Running the Geisley and the Voodoo with the hybrid 46. And then the MFV F001 is, again, the key mod stock or foregrip that goes in here. It is plus 10 Ergo, so it's huge. And then using the GL core along with the advanced the advanced tube, which you could use the red one if you want to get that little extra muzzle velocity, but it's just super expensive. But if budget doesn't matter, that is your deal. Don't forget your your front and rear sights, and you're ready to go. The last one I'm going to show you guys is my build. This is the one I did a lot of running around with for most of my bolt action work that I was doing. This is how I ran it for various reasons. You can change it up here from you want. I was using the Wave QD, though. I probably right now would switch to some of the other suppressors, because this was before I had a lot of stuff unlocked, or some of the suppressors were more expensive earlier in wipe. They've started to get cheaper now, so it's not as big of a deal. I also didn't have a attachment on here for a red dot, though I know some people like running that for, you know, up close fights. And then I just run the MOE FDE stock to kind of keep that color together. Just kind of a looks thing. You do what you want to do. But that there is the builds. That's the M700. I hope this video is helpful. I hope you can go out there and build the M700 you want to build now. Take some of those longer range shots, have different weapons, and just enjoy Tarkov's other side of the bolt actions side of the game. But with that, we'll wrap it up. Quick shout out to my music, link down in the description. If you are a content creator, you can use it in your YouTube videos or on your stream. No fear of copyright strikes or DMCA takedowns. We just ask that you attribute it to us. It's also pretty good music, so if you want to just listen to it, go check it out. Let me know what you think. We're up to 120 songs now. If you're listening on Spotify or wherever, it helps out the channel. Just another way to support us at no cost to you guys. But thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. I wish you the best of luck in your raids, and we'll see you in Tarkov.